Today we're talking about unlearning, which is a very long and never-ending process that we go through as parents, as caregivers, as anyone who loves a child or has been one. So a little bit of credential here. I'm currently the Director of Education at Conner Prairie. I have been with Conner Prairie for almost 5 years. Prior to my current role, I was an assistant principal in Indianapolis Public Schools. I served there for 3 years. I taught kindergarten and first grade. My master's is in educational administration from Missouri State, and I have a Bachelor of Science in early childhood education from Indiana University. Here's the real me, though. This is my beautiful family. I'm a partner, a mother, an observer, a lifelong learner. Some things that I love: nature, children, of course, poetry, cooking, play, and I have a reputation for being radically honest and inspiring others and always putting love first. So as we sink into the healing magic of unlearning, I would like for you to take a moment to think about a time in your childhood when you were deeply engaged in play. So you can close your eyes if you're comfortable, or just soften your gaze and think back to a time when you were playing and that was really the only thing on your mind in that moment. You can think about where you were, who you were with, if you were playing a game or possibly pretending, and most importantly, how did you feel in that moment? And as you get to that space in your mind, oftentimes when I have this conversation with adults, they will share a memory of being with someone who was really special to them, or being in a really special place. A lot of times, imagination and pretend play comes into our memory. There are sometimes games. Very often the memories are outside. I've heard stories of lilac bushes from grandparents' yards that felt like a magical getaway. So think about that time and what it feels like to be deeply engaged in play. And as we go through the rest of the presentation, I just encourage you to hold on to that part of you because it's still in there. I found this quote and I thought it was really relevant. Half of wisdom is learning what to unlearn. Society teaches us a lot of things throughout our life and throughout our adolescence especially, and that creates some beliefs that sometimes are not congruent with the beliefs that we had originally or that we held close prior to the impact of stress in school and all of the things that life comes with. So it's important to get back to our own intuition and figure out exactly what we do believe and exactly what we need to feel fulfilled, healthy, and happy. So we've been getting this a little bit wrong in America. When we push academics early, it causes more harm than good. And that is based on a lot of research and science. When we ask a child to navigate the world at a desk inside a building, it's just not developmentally appropriate. That's not how their bodies interact with their spaces. And that expectation is really limiting for how they experience the world. Going back to our own intuition, sometimes that gets lost or we're encouraged to ignore it. We also are ignoring neuroscience. We have learned so much about the brain in the last 20 years, and we know exactly how children learn, but we're still providing these experiences for them that don't honor that truth. And that causes us to rob children of joy and of wonder that they're entitled to and they have a right to. We're limiting their potential by stunting their own unique path for growth and learning. Their bodies and their brains know just what they need. You can think about an infant in this instance. They quickly start to utilize their sight to experience the world, and then they move their bodies in ways. We have our muscles develop from the outside in. So we're really building great riders when we're allowing children to climb or experience proprioception, hanging upside down, spinning. They need opportunities for all of those things. And an infant will start putting things into their mouth because that's how they're sensing the item that they have, whether that be their toes or a toy. And we allow this very natural development until children reach a certain age. And then we just sort of pretend like they no longer know what they need. We're the expert on that. And that just isn't true. However, it's really hard to address that because there's an expectation as parents or caregivers or teachers to have compliant behavior when you're out in public, to achieve in your academic career. We have a lot of stress and exhaustion and overwhelm from this very hurried life in society and culture. And there's a great fear of failure for all of us parents. We always want to do what's best for our children. Parents always want to do what is best for their children. And because of that, and the overabundance of information that is out there, and the competitive nature of our schooling and sports, it really causes this, this overwhelm for parents and this fear of not giving our child what they need. That leads to a lot of doubt, and it's counterintuitive to what we know. And then there's this overabundance of marketed products, like your child really needs these blocks so they can learn these things, or they really need this reading series so that they can become the best reader by this very early age. And it's so hard to know what do we really need to invest in, and what does our child actually need to be successful, and what does that success look like? And all of that creates all of these pressures for parents and for caregivers and for teachers. And it's very hard sometimes to know what to do. And that's why unlearning is so important, because you do know what to do. So what does that mean for our children when they have lack of time to play, to wonder, to dream, to dawdle? I love that word. To notice, to rest. They're born with the desire, and their brain is designed to seek out all of those things. And we limit that in our public education system and sometimes in our homes. And I've been guilty of the same thing. It takes a long time to go through this process of unlearning, because what we have in our minds about how we learned, or what our experiences were, that really shapes how we handle it in our own lives. So what does the science tell us? The American Academy of Pediatrics has a pretty strong stance on play and the importance of play. They say that play is not frivolous, it's brain building. And sometimes there's this pressure, like, well, especially in school, preschool too, like, well, the kids are just playing. What's the lesson plan? What's the objective? What's the learning outcome? We don't need to decide that. The child knows. We have to give them time, space, and freedom to figure that out. That's how they become the best version of themselves. And so it's really important that we return to that inner child, to the memories we have of play, and remember that feeling, and also your own innate desire to move on to the next thing. Sometimes that presents itself in classrooms where it's like, okay, the timer's gone off, we're moving to the next activity, when this child is very, very focused and learning something very important. We also have a fear of our child missing out. So when we see a lot of opportunity around us, like in a museum setting, for example, we want them to experience all of the things. So we want to make sure that they get time at the water table and they get time at the blocks, but they may just need to be at the blocks the whole entire time, and that's okay. Or they might want to take the blocks to the water table. We call that cross-pollination at Conner Prairie, and it's really, really important. But when we create these zones and these time constraints, that isn't what play is, and it's not really serving the child. It's checking boxes, serving the adults, and providing these very simple ways to track data. But what we're learning is that that data doesn't necessarily hold up over time. So for example, a child might enter school and be assessed on how quickly they can name their letters, and how quickly they can read sight words out of context. But those same children are not passing standardized testing in third grade, because they've learned all of these things in isolation instead of having their own interests developed and cultured and nurtured in those moments. Here's another quote from a professional with American Academy of Pediatrics. Kids whose time is overly organized don't have time to be kids, and their family doesn't have time to be a family. They typically don't eat well, sleep well, or make friends properly. I think one area that I see this in my own life is with homework for the pre-K and first grade students. They're deeply engaged in play. They're building a fort. They're experimenting with cause and effect and even physics. But it's like, well, we have to get this homework done. So we're going to stop that really important learning that's happening and come back and do this worksheet for this isolated skill. And that's really problematic. And oftentimes it leads to power struggles or a not so great interaction between a parent and a child when they're both tired and ready to take a break. None of us want to come home from work and do a little bit more work. One more quote here on the Committee on the Rights of the Child. Play is essential to the health and well-being of children and promotes the development of creativity, imagination, self-confidence, self-efficacy, as well as all of the strength and skills in the physical, social, cognitive, and emotional realm. So it's important when we think about fighting for this right to play that we understand what play really is. There's a lot of language out there, purposeful play. All play is purposeful if it's directed by the child. If they have time, space, and freedom, and they're able to interact with the environment in the way that feels natural to them, it is purposeful. Whether you have an objective for it or not, they do. Play is self-chosen and self-directed. Play is intrinsically motivated. The means are more valued than the ends. So it's about the process, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Play is guided by mental rules, but the rules leave room for creativity. So children you will see in group play will often create these kind of rules that maybe aren't stated out loud, but they figure it out. But that doesn't mean that they can't be changed to accommodate whatever they're testing or creating in that time. Play is imaginative. It gives them an opportunity to sort of escape, to try on these different ideas or even professions or identities. Play is conducted in an alert, active, but relatively non-stressed frame of mind. A child is very rarely deeply engaged in play when they're not regulated emotionally. So talking more about that process versus the final product. And the easiest way for me to think about this is when we think about art. If we have this predetermined goal, we really limit the child in what they're capable of creating. If the goal is that they interact with these materials and express themselves through art, then great. If the goal is complete this craft that I've already modeled for you, we're robbing them of the opportunity to be creative in the first place. And this is Vygotsky here. He's a pillar in educational philosophy. The basic law of children's creativity is that its value lies not in its results, not in the product of creation, but in the process itself. And when we think about art specifically, if the teacher has decided or the caregiver has decided, these are the pieces that you can use, these are the materials that you have, this is what you're making. The adult is the one doing the work. The adult is the one who's doing the thinking. And there isn't much left for the child to learn except how to follow directions well, which shouldn't be the purpose of art to begin with. Just a little bit more on that, just visual representation. When we see preschooler art, sometimes it's like, oh my, okay, you used a whole bottle of glue and a whole entire roll of tape. But that was really important for them. They're testing a lot of things, and they have such a short time in their life to explore materials in that very free-flowing way before those cultural and societal expectations take over. And giving them the opportunity to express themselves in that way is going to lead to a lot more grace for themselves, a lot less pressure on performing or completing something perfectly or to please others. It's intrinsically motivated for them. And just because it doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't mean there's no value there. I have a little story to share with you that I think illustrates this well. This is called The Little Boy, and it's by Helen Buckley. Once a little boy went to school. One morning when the little boy had been in school a while, his teacher said, "Today we are going to make a picture." Good, thought the little boy. He liked to make pictures. He could make all kinds, lions and tigers, chickens and cows, trains and boats. And he took out his box of crayons and began to draw. But the teacher said, wait, it is not time to begin. And she waited until everyone looked ready. Now, said the teacher, we're going to make flowers. Good, thought the little boy. He liked to make flowers. And he began to make beautiful ones with pinks and oranges and blues. But the teacher said, wait, and I will show you how. And it was red with a green stem. There, said the teacher, now you may begin. The little boy looked at the teacher's. Then he looked at his own. He liked his flower better than the teacher's, but he did not say this. He just turned his paper over and made a flower like the teacher's. It was red with a green stem. On another day, when the little boy had opened the door from the outside all by himself, the teacher said, today we're going to make something with clay. Good, thought the little boy. Snakes and snowmen, elephants and mice, cars and trucks. And he began to pull and pinch his ball of clay. But the teacher said, wait, it is not time to begin. And she waited until everyone looked ready. Now, said the teacher, we are going to make a dish. He liked to make dishes, and he began to make some that were all shapes and sizes. But the teacher said, wait, and I will show you how. And she showed everyone how to make a deep dish. There, said the teacher, now you may begin. The little boy looked at the teacher's dish, then he looked at his own. He liked his dish better than the teacher's, but he did not say this. He just rolled his clay into a big ball again and made a dish like the teacher's. It was a deep dish. And pretty soon, the little boy learned to wait and to watch and to make things just like the teacher. And pretty soon, he didn't make things of his own anymore. Then it happened that the little boy and his family moved to another house in another city, and the little boy had to go to another school. And the very first day he was there, the teacher said, today we are going to make a picture. Good, thought the little boy, and he waited for the teacher to tell him what to do. But the teacher didn't say anything. She just walked around the room. When she came to the little boy, she said, don't you want to make a picture? Yes, said the little boy. What are we going to make? I don't know until you make it, said the teacher. How shall I make it? Asked the little boy. Why, any way you like, said the teacher. Any color? Asked the little boy. Any color. If everyone made the same picture and used the same colors, how would I know who made it? I don't know, said the little boy. And he began to make a red flower with a green stem. I always feel the air move out of the room when I read this story. It's a really powerful illustration of what happens to our children when every choice they make is dictated by us. When we think about this, we have to think about our image of children. There are hundreds of different images of the child. Each one of you has inside yourself an image of the child that directs you as you begin to relate to the child. This theory within you pushes you to behave in certain ways. It orients you as you talk to the child, listen to the child, observe the child. It is very difficult for you to act contrary to this internal image. And when we think about what we believe about children, the image of the child to us, this is a very sacred time in the journey of life. Everything is new. That's why when a kid walks outside in the morning and it's raining, they might say, what a beautiful day. They haven't been jaded by the pressures and the hardships. And this here is Loris Malaguzzi. He's the founder of the Reggio Emilia approach. And there's some very famous literature, The 100 Languages of Children, talking about a similar sentiment and all the ways they can express themselves and all the ways that we see them. But if we see children in the light that they deserve, then our practice will be a lot different. And the way we handle those interactions in those moments and the way we give grace to using up all the tape or getting paint on the table, it will change. Our beliefs about children guide our actions, and we have to think about that. I can share with you what I believe. Their brains are designed to learn through play when they're ready to master a new concept, just like the infant we talked about earlier. Children are capable, intelligent, trustworthy. They have a right to time, space, and freedom to be who they are, to explore their world, to figure it all out. They need love and community, and those things require time and nurturing on our part. Children should be provided opportunities to make decisions. You become good at making decisions by making decisions. You become good at assessing risk by assessing risk. I always think about the puddle analogy. If we say, don't jump in that puddle, it's going to get you wet, or watch out, be careful, then the child is constantly afraid of whatever their instinctual next step was. When a child sees a puddle, it's an opportunity. They're going to jump into it, feel the water. They need to know what it feels like to have wet socks. Usually later in life, you recognize that you don't want to have wet socks. So you either figure out how to get better boots or how to avoid the puddles, but we don't need to rob them of the experience. Sometimes I'll hear parents say, oh, don't pour that in, it will overflow. Well, how do you think you know that? We know it's going to overflow, but they need to test that. And they may need to test it at that same water table over and over and over. That's play schema. We know what their brains are doing in that moment. We just have to allow them the time and space. They need to practice solving their own problems. At Preschool on the Prairie, which is our preschool here at Conner Prairie, we will often videotape children when they're in peer conflict. Obviously, we don't allow children to harm each other, but when they're having a disagreement over whose turn it is to use a material, we don't immediately jump in and solve the problem for them. We're there in case they need our help or in case it escalates, but we let them talk it out. And 9 times out of 10, they solve those problems on their own. And they're becoming more confident in that, more trusting of themselves, and more empathetic for their peers. I have a short video to share with you here. Confusion that afflicts the world today. I see a disrespect for the very values of life. Beauty is all about us, but how many are blind to it? They look at the wonder of this earth and seem to see nothing. People move hectically, but give little thought to where they are going. Each second, we live in a new and unique moment of the universe, a moment that never was before and will never be again. And what do we teach our children in school? We teach them that 2 and 2 makes 4, and that Paris is the capital of France. When will we also teach them what they are? We should say to each of them, do you know what you are? You are a marvel. You are unique. In all of the world, there is no other child exactly like you. In the millions of years that have passed, there has never been another child like you. And look at your body. What a wonder it is. Your legs, your arms, your cunning fingers, the way you move. You may become a Shakespeare, a Michelangelo, a Beethoven. You have the capacity for anything. Yes, you are a marvel. And when you grow up, can you then harm another who is like you, a marvel? You must cherish one another. You must work. We all must work to make this world worthy of its children. Those are some images from our beloved preschool here at Conner Prairie. And I just think it's so beautiful to think about the magic of childhood and all that we can do to support children in this really special time in their life. And this just gives you a glimpse into what I believe about children. And when we have those beliefs and when they're shared, they're really powerful and it can really change the course of our child's life. So what do we do about all of this? First of all, breathe. I remind myself of this often as a parent, as an educator. There's so much going on all the time. You're trying to satisfy all the expectations of society, possibly of your employer, the schedule of your family. It's very overwhelming. So take a deep breath in, let it out, and remember that you do know your child and you know exactly what they need if you'll only listen to them. You're your child's first teacher. You know them better than anyone else. And that means that you are their number one advocate, and you can fill that advocacy role as their caregiver, as their educator, as their aunt, as their friend. Take some time also to think about your beliefs around childhood play and learning. Where did this belief come from? Is this something that's been handed to you or that you're remembering from your own childhood? See what you really believe at your core. Feel confident in your own intuition. Trust yourself. That will give you a lot more opportunity to trust the children in your care. and get to the root of your fears. So often we hear, I don't want my child to be behind. And I always say, behind in what? And usually we get to literacy. You don't want your child to show up and feel like they can't keep up with their classmates, but you have to trust that process. Not every 5-year-old learns and understands the exact same concepts just because they're 5. There's a continuum there, just like all children don't start walking at the same age or crawling at the same age. It's very natural for those things to deviate from one person to another. And in school, it's not set up to be assessed that way. So you have the right to advocate for your child, to trust the process. They may not be super interested in reading when they're 5, but at 7, they can't wait to read another book. You have to trust the process and give them time, and advocate for them when they become part of these systems that are based on ideas that perhaps you don't even believe in yourself. And think about what that success looks like for your child. Do you want them to be the valedictorian, or do you want them to be happy? What does that look like for you and your family? And I would like you to accept my permission. Remember your truest self. Release the doubts and fears that have been pushed onto you. Trust your child, trust yourself. That's what unlearning is. And remember to play. Modeling is the best way, and it takes practice. Often when we give loose parts or open-ended activities or materials to adults, they say, well, what do we do? And I'll say, whatever you want. And it takes them a long time to settle in because they've forgotten, because they've been told for so long, just like the child in the classroom from the red flower story. Confusion